The year is 425 BCE. A woman walks between tables carrying wine for Sparta's elite warriors. Her hands tremble. One of the men makes a crude joke. The entire hall erupts in laughter. Without thinking, she mutters a single word under her breath. The laughter stops. Within seconds, 2 guards have her by the arms. She's dragged from the hall, screaming her crime. Speaking during a sacred meal. Her punishment? You'll find out exactly what happened to her in just a moment. And trust me, it's worse than you're imagining. But that's not even the worst part. Today I'm exposing 3 things historians don't want you to know about ancient Sparta. First, the civilization that made silence a literal death sentence. Second, the meal where 1 syllable could end your life. And third, here's where it gets insane, how this brutal law accidentally sparked what historians now call history's first organized feminist uprising. Before we reveal the full horror of what happened to that woman, hit that subscribe button. Seriously, 97% of you watching right now aren't subscribed, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why this story almost got erased from history entirely. Because what I'm about to show you changes everything you thought you knew about ancient Greece. Let's start with what they don't teach you in school. To understand why speaking at dinner could get you killed, you need to know the truth about Spartan society. When you think of Sparta, you picture warriors, the 300 at Thermopylae, brutal military training. But here's what nobody tells you. Sparta wasn't just a warrior culture, it was a surveillance state, with over 100 documented laws specifically controlling women's behavior. Not just talking, everything. How they walked, where they could go, who they could look at, when they could breathe too loudly. At the center of this control system was something called the Syssitia, communal dining halls where Spartan citizens ate together every single night. Imagine if your workplace made you eat dinner with your coworkers, your boss, and government officials watching your every move. Now imagine 1 wrong word, 1 slip of the tongue, and you're facing execution. That was daily life. But here's where it gets twisted. The silence codes weren't equal. Men could speak freely, debate, even argue during meals. Women, if they served food, poured wine, or happened to be within earshot of these gatherings, they had to remain absolutely silent. Not quiet silent. The difference between life and death was measured in decibels. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's horrible, but it was ancient times. Lots of cultures treated women badly. Wrong. Even by ancient standards, Sparta was extreme. Aristotle himself wrote that Spartan women had too much freedom in some areas, which makes the dining hall laws even more disturbing. Because these weren't about religion or tradition. These laws were weapons, tools of control disguised as etiquette. And the punishment for breaking them? Imagine you sitting at that table exhausted from serving all day, and you accidentally cough or sigh or whisper, "Excuse me," as you reach past someone. What happens next is documented in ancient sources, and it's so brutal that historians debated for decades whether to include it in textbooks. Let me show you exactly what they found. The woman from our opening, her name is lost to history, but what happened to her is carved into ancient records, and it reveals something horrifying. In his work, Life of Lycurgus, the historian Plutarch documents something he calls the Andria, elite men's dining clubs where Sparta's most powerful citizens gathered. These weren't casual dinners. They were ritualized performances of power. And women who served at these meals, they existed in a legal gray zone. Technically human, practically invisible. The law was explicit. Women serving at Syssitia meals during religious festivals or military celebrations could not speak unless directly addressed by a male citizen of equal or higher rank than their male guardian. Read that again. She couldn't speak unless a man gave permission. And here's the sick part. Most women serving these meals were slaves or helots who didn't have male guardians present, which meant they couldn't legally speak at all. But what happened if they broke this rule? Plutarch records 3 documented punishments, escalating based on the severity of the speech. First offense, public flogging. Exactly 39 lashes in the agora while citizens watched. The number 39 was specific. It was 1 less than the 40 lashes that could legally kill someone.
They wanted you to survive. Barely. Second offense, exiled to the mountains without food or water. Most died within 3 days. Those who survived, they were considered pollution, permanently banned from entering any Spartan building, including their own homes. Third offense, or first offense during certain sacred meals, was execution. Now here's what makes this even more twisted. The method of execution wasn't quick, it was designed to send a message. Women who spoke during sacred syssitia meals were taken to the edge of the Euroas liver. Their tongues were pierced with hot iron spikes, not cut out, pierced, so they could still attempt to speak, but only produce gurgling sounds. Then they were thrown into the river. The symbolism was intentional. Your voice tried to rise above your station, so now you drown in your own blood trying to speak. Imagine you are that woman who muttered one word. You're being dragged from the hall. You can hear the river. You know what's coming. And you're thinking about that single syllable that ended your life. One word. Plutarch estimates this happened to dozens, perhaps hundreds of women during Sparta's peak. But here's what historians hide in footnotes, buried in academic papers where most people will never see it. This law had one exception, one bizarre loophole that not only saved certain women, it accidentally gave them power. And when they figured out how to exploit it, everything changed. Don't click away yet, because this loophole created something unprecedented in ancient history. A network of women who turned the law itself into a weapon against their oppressors. Here's the exception that changed everything. Women could speak during syssitia meals if they were reporting another woman's violation of conduct codes. Read that again slowly. You couldn't speak to defend yourself, ask a question, or make conversation, but you could accuse another woman of wrongdoing. Sparta had created a surveillance society where women policed each other. And here's the genius of it, from the men's perspective anyway. They didn't need to watch the women constantly. The women watched each other. Aristotle, writing about 50 years after these laws peaked, made a fascinating observation. He criticized Sparta for giving women too much license in property ownership and inheritance. Spartan women could control wealth in ways Athenian women never could. But then he notes something strange. Despite this economic freedom, women at communal meals were oppressed to the point of creating internal division. He's talking about this law, this loophole. But here's what Aristotle didn't realize. Or maybe he did and chose not to write it down. Some Spartan women figured out how to weaponize this exception. Imagine you were a Spartan woman in 400 BCE. You hate this system. You want to organize resistance, but you can't speak in public spaces without risking death. How do you communicate?
The answer? You use the loophole. Women started making false accusations against each other, but encoding real messages in how they phrased the accusations. The tone, the specific words, the timing, all of it carried meaning to those who knew the code. A woman might say, "I witnessed Helen speaking improperly near the eastern wall at sunset yesterday." To the male authorities, it's a simple report. To other women listening, "Helen has information. Meet at the eastern wall at sunset." We know this happened because of something scholars call the crypta documents, fragments of Spartan secret police reports that survived. They reference women making unusually high numbers of accusations that investigators could not verify. The system was breaking down. And then, in 397 BCE, one woman decided she was done playing by their rules entirely. Her name was Aegiatis. And yes, we actually know her name, because what she did next almost destroyed Sparta from the inside. When the authorities came for her after she spoke openly during a military victory feast, she didn't run, she didn't apologize, she looked them in the eye and said 7 words that sparked a revolution. "Then let every woman in Sparta speak." What happened next involved secret meetings, coordinated resistance, and a conspiracy so massive that historians still debate its full scope today. The punishment she faced? It makes drowning look merciful. And it's all documented on ancient tablets that archaeologists tried to keep hidden for decades. Stay with me because this next part reveals how far Sparta would go to crush dissent and why it ultimately failed. The Greek historian Xenophon documented what he called the conspiracy of Cynodon, a plot to overthrow Sparta's ruling class led by a man named Cynodon who wasn't a full citizen. For decades, historians focused on Cynodon as the mastermind. But in 1998, a researcher at the University of Cambridge named Dr. Sarah Pomeroy published something explosive, a reanalysis of Xenophon's text that revealed something hidden in plain sight. The conspiracy wasn't led by Cynodon. He was the public face. The actual coordination done entirely by Spartan women using the illegal communication networks they'd built through coded accusations during meals. Here's how we know. Xenophon writes that conspirators communicated during sacred gatherings when speech should have been forbidden. He assumed this meant secret nighttime meetings, but Pomeroy realized they were talking during Syssitia meals in plain sight using the accusation loophole. The plan was sophisticated. Women serving meals would pass information to helots and lower-class citizens. The goal? Simultaneous uprisings in multiple Spartan territories that would overwhelm the elite warrior class. It almost worked, but someone talked. A woman named Thoro, and yes, we know her name too, because Xenophon specifically mentions her, betrayed the conspiracy. Scholars debate why. Some say she was tortured, others say she was offered citizenship. But here's what we know for certain. She revealed the names of 37 women involved in the coordination network. All 37 were arrested within a single night. And the punishment wasn't the river. It wasn't quick death. The Spartan authorities wanted to send a message that would echo through generations. They were taken to the public theater. Yes, Sparta had theaters, and forced to kneel in front of the entire city. Then one by one, their tongues were cut out completely. Not pierced, removed. But they weren't killed. They were released back into society as living warnings, women whose silence was now permanent and visible. Xenophon writes that the sight of these women attempting to scream with no sound served as greater deterrent than execution. Imagine you are in that crowd watching women you know, maybe your friends, your relatives, subjected to this horror, and you realize this is the price of speaking up. The conspiracy died that day. Cynodon was captured and executed. The network collapsed. But here's what the Spartan authorities didn't expect. This brutality didn't strengthen their control, it revealed how fragile it really was. And recent archaeological discoveries prove these laws weren't what we thought they were at all. I know, this is getting dark, but if you're still watching, you clearly want the full truth, because what archaeologists found in 2019 changes everything. In 2019, a team from the University of Athens published a study that sent shockwaves through the historical community. They'd analyzed 47 newly discovered legal tablets from the Spartan Acropolis, documents that survived because they'd been deliberately buried. And what they found contradicts almost everything we thought we knew about these laws. The dining hall silence laws, they weren't religious codes at all. They were political weapons selectively enforced based on who needed to be controlled. Dr. Nicholas Kallers, the lead researcher, explains it like this. We found documentation of elite Spartan women speaking freely during the same sacred meals where lower-class women were executed for the same behavior. The laws weren't about piety. They were about maintaining class hierarchies. This is massive. It means every execution, every mutilation, every drowning, it wasn't because they broke divine law. It was political murder disguised as religious enforcement. The tablets document specific cases. A helot woman executed for speaking during a military feast in 412 BCE. An elite woman who spoke during the same feast punished with a fine of 10 drachma. The elite woman's fine never collected. Same crime, same meal, different social class, different outcome. And here's the devastating part. The historical consequences of these laws didn't just affect women. They accelerated Sparta's entire decline as a civilization. How? Think about it.
Sparta's warrior culture depended on population. You need soldiers, but when you alienate, brutalize, and terrorize half your population, they stop cooperating with your society's goals. Birth rates among Spartan citizens collapsed in the 4th century BCE. Women who could bear future warriors simply refused. Some historians call it silent resistance. Women didn't rebel overtly, they just stopped participating in Sparta's future. By 371 BCE, when Sparta faced Thebes at the Battle of Leuctra, they could only field 700 full Spartan citizens as soldiers. A generation earlier, they would have had 4,000. The silence laws created a generation of women who would rather see Sparta fall than perpetuate the system. But the women didn't stay silent forever. Those communication networks they built, they went underground, transformed into something historians now call the crypto networks. Not the secret police the men ran, but shadow organizations where women preserved forbidden knowledge. When Sparta finally collapsed in 192 BCE, Greek writers record that Spartan women were among the first to openly celebrate in the streets. One ancient graffiti found in 1987 reads, "At last, our tongues are our own." By 300 BCE, these specific dining laws had vanished from Greek society, but the trauma lasted centuries. Greek plays, poetry, and philosophical texts from the following 200 years are filled with references to the silence of Sparta, used as shorthand for oppression so severe it echoes through generations. The women who survived made sure we'd never forget, even if historians tried to bury it. So here's what this story is really about. This was never about table manners or religious piety. This was about erasing women's voices from every structure of power and disguising that erasure as tradition. And if you think this is just ancient history, look around. We still see professional silence expected of women in boardrooms where men dominate the conversation. We still see women criticized for being too loud, too opinionated, too much. The methods changed, the goal didn't. The women of Sparta couldn't vote out their oppressors, couldn't protest publicly, couldn't even speak. But they found ways to resist anyway, and eventually they won. Not through violence, through refusal. So here's my question for you. What etiquette rules in modern society are actually control mechanisms? Drop your answers in the comments below and tell me which ancient culture's dark secrets I should expose next, because trust me, every civilization has them. If this video opened your eyes to something you never learned in school, smash that subscribe button. Next week, I'm revealing the Roman punishment that was legally worse than crucifixion. And yes, it's documented. Thanks for watching, and remember, history is written by the victors, but archaeology doesn't lie.